I'll also have one note before we get into introductions that everybody who's on Zoom at home, make sure you're muted, so that we can minimize any sound interruptions along the way.
And yes, I'll say similarly, if anybody has cell phones, if you could put them on vibrator. Everybody reaches into their pockets, and thank you very much. So just like in the movie theaters. Hello, everybody. I am Glenn Reed. I'm going to kick off today's public forum on Carlisle's Community Choice Aggregation Program, also referred to as CCA for short, so we don't trip over it all the time. I'll be co-presenting with Bob Zog, and we'll do full introductions in just a moment. I just want to talk about some trying to advance the slides, and they have been advancing just fine before.
I think maybe it needs that to be recognized. There you go.
All right. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Just a few meeting details first, please. This is a hybrid meeting. We have both in-person attendees as well as attendees participating virtually via Zoom. As Sarah noted, this meeting is being recorded and will be accessible to the public on the town website, and we'll give you more details on that later. As we noted, please mute yourself unless speaking, and please hold questions for the end. There will be a Q&A at the end. However, if there are questions you have to help clarify a particular statement being made, please do not hesitate for that. Don't wait till the end for that. All right. So we're going to do some introductions. I'm Glenn Reed. Bob Zog and I are part of a working group working with our town administrator, Ryan McLean, working on community choice aggregation for the town. We are here with Sarah Wasserman. Sarah, do you want to say hello and maybe introduce yourself as one of our newest town employees?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm waving to the owl. Hello, everyone in the room. My name's Sarah Wasserman. My position title is Land Use and Sustainability Coordinator. So I've joined to help the town both on the land use side of things, lending a hand in the building department, but also on the sustainability side. And so I've been here for about 3 weeks, so I'm just absorbing as much as I can about how Carlisle works and what you're all working on. So I'm happy to be here.
Sarah, welcome. Bob, you just want to say hello to the group?
Yes. Hi, everyone. As Glenn mentioned, I've been working on CCA. Actually, I go back to our first contract when I first started getting involved as a volunteer. I've been on the Energy Task Force for many years, and then I was on the Environmental Sustainability Committee for about a year. And as some of you know, I also am involved in the Heat Smart Alliance, which is an organization to promote the use of heat pumps in our homes.
In addition to Bob and myself and Sarah, we also have representatives from Colonial Power, the consulting firm that is responsible for helping solicit bids for the generation supply and to negotiate them, and also provides reporting. We have one individual participating from Central Western Mass online, Denise Allard, and we have 2 representatives, including the president of Colonial Power here in person, and I'll actually let them introduce themselves.
Mark Capadona, Colonial Power.
Joseph Capadona, Colonial Power.
Thank you, gentlemen. And Denise will, if you want to, we'll let you wave if you want. There we go. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, so the agenda for today, I'm going to do a quick summary of the Community Choice Aggregation Program. We're going to talk about electric service in Massachusetts, the different constituent parts that comprise the delivery of electricity in Massachusetts, and what's covered by CCA and what's not. We're going to do a history of community choice aggregation in Carlisle. As Bob noted, we've been doing this for a number of years. We were in our third round at this point, and Bob will give you some of that history. We're gonna then talk about both the cost and environmental considerations in regards to the different options that we have available to us through community choice aggregation, and also have the opportunity to compare them to what you would encounter if you were purchasing electricity from Eversource from both a cost and renewable component perspective. And then finally, as noted, we will have Q&A. Again, clarifying questions are fine, but more substantive ones, we'd appreciate if you wait to the end. Okay, so why choose community choice aggregation? Why are we doing this? Well, you know, the best reason is we have saved over the last 5 years, $5.5 million. Oh, 3.1, I'm sorry, it's 5.5 years. Sorry, $3.1 million over 5.5 years. That's a substantial amount of money for a small town like Carlisle, and also keeping in account the fact that not all households in town are on community choice aggregation. Please also note, while we have engendered savings in every year of doing this, there is no guarantee that we will in fact have savings, and savings vary from year to year, so just want to be aware of that. Another important consideration in community choice aggregation is not just the cost of the power, but the fact that the power that we are purchasing has as great or a greater amount of renewable class 1 RECs content than what you purchase from Eversource. And the default option, and we'll be going over these 3 different options that are available to Carlisle residents in more detail in just a little bit, but the standard default option has 25 percentage points greater renewable class 1 RECs content than the Eversource default option. Our optional basic, which is a lower cost option, matches Eversource, and there's a optional green 100% renewable option available, though not surprisingly, at a higher cost than the other 2 options. And Bob will be going into the details in terms of the costs and renewable contents of all 3 of these options in just a little bit. And further, there are fewer price fluctuations. Eversource changes its generation supply costs every 6 months. We have been involved in, I believe, both 2 and 3 year contracts, so there's greater price stability, greater certainty as to what you're paying through community choice aggregation than if you were an Eversource customer in terms of your supply option. We're all Eversource customers, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, but we're talking about the supply component here. And finally, we also, as noted, have the advantage of having hands-on consulting services available to us to help make these choices, to go out to bid for power, to review the proposals, and to deal on an ongoing basis as needed with our power supplier, and those services are provided by Colonial Power. All right. So we're gonna walk through an energy bill. I won't say whose bill this is, but I'm very familiar with this particular bill, even though it's been redacted. So there's 2 pages to your bill. If there, even though we only have a few people in attendance here, I'm going to ask those who are. Do you look at your bill every month? Okay.
No.
No. Okay. So about equal yeses and equal nos. Okay. So we're going to take a moment to look at the bill and help you identify what it is we're talking about here in terms of community choice aggregation and what part of the bill is actually affected, because it's only part of the bill. So here, this bill is a customer, me, I'll say, who is on community choice aggregation, and through the end of last year, and this bill, went up to the end of December, our then current supplier for power supply was Residence Energy. It's now Dynergy starting the beginning of this year. So all future bills for those of us on community choice aggregation will have Dynergy listed as the supplier for electricity for somebody who is doing community choice aggregation. If you're an Eversource basic service customer, it will say Eversource. And if you've gone and selected somebody different, it will have the name of that competitive power supplier there.
Excuse me, where's the Dynergy down there?
The Dynergy not there because Dynergy is our new supplier. And when I received this bill, while Residence Energy was providing power. So my next bill, our next bills for those of us in community choice aggregation will have Dynergy, not Residence Energy listed. All right, so this is the busy part of the bill. We're not going to go through all of this, but we're going to focus, at least as of now, on the supply component. You know, it's also referred to as the generation component. It is one of the three main components of your bill. We'll get into this in a little bit more, but we have generation, which is the only part of the bill that's up for discussion for community choice aggregation. Other parts of the bill are with the responsibility of Eversource. We're all still Eversource customers. That is the number that we're looking at in terms of the supply cost for generation. It was 11.45 cents with our last contract for a number of reasons. You know, we can thank some of what's going on in the Ukraine, etc. The cost of energy has gone up. So the new supply costs for 2024 range between almost 15 cents for optional basic to almost 18 cents for optional green, but the standard default, which the large majority of Carlisle residents are on, is just a little bit under 16 cents. And I believe, and Bob will go into this in more detail, that the Eversource rate is over 17 cents. Yep. All right. For those people either here or on Zoom who are not currently CCA participants, either because you moved into Carlisle and decided not to avail yourself of community choice aggregation, or you have opted out and either gone to Eversource, back to Eversource, or chosen a different competitive supplier. If you want to join the CCA, or if you're a CCA customer and you want to change which of the three products you're on, and again, we'll review those in more detail in a bit. This is the information that you want to pursue either online or by phone, and it's pretty straightforward. All right. And there are also details on the town website too. So again, we're going to just talk briefly about power supply, what it is we're talking about here for community choice aggregation versus what is the rest of the bill that's not in play. All right. So supply, also referred to as generation, includes production and sale. It's the generating plants, it's the solar farms, it's the wind farms, it's creating the electricity that powers your home. Supply in Massachusetts has been deregulated for almost 25 years. You know, we've had options. Well, I think at first it might have only been for large manufacturers, industrial, but right now any customer has the option of choosing a supplier other than Eversource. Eversource continues to have the responsibility as the default for any customer who wants to remain or switch to them as a power supplier. Okay. So we have the supply. Well, the supply has to get from the generating plants to the house, to the place of business, to the municipal office. Transportation includes two components: transmission, high tension power lines that you see, and distribution, the local lines that's, you know, that fall when the trees come down and the ice storms. Eversource is responsible for maintaining the delivery system. They're also responsible for billing, for customer service. So when something goes wrong with your power, you continue to call Eversource regardless of who is supplying your power. And you know, as noted, that's a responsibility of Eversource. You don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. You know, that continues to be one of the monopoly functions and monopoly responsibilities of Eversource in terms of their role as a utility in Massachusetts. And Yeah, and then the electric bill, we went through a typical electric bill. It itemizes these costs. If people had questions about the other charges on the bill, happy to speak to people after the Q&A, or if we have time during the Q&A, because there are a lot of additional costs in there. But by far and away, the three largest costs are generation, which is in play, transmission and distribution, which are not. And then there are a lot of additional ancillary charges, but again, we're not going to get into those here.
What's the difference between transmission and distribution?
It's a matter of scale. I'm not quite sure what the formal definition is. As I noted before, the high tension power lines that you see, crossing the highways, that's transmission. High voltage, the power lines, the power poles that we have, running the streets in Carlisle, the power coming from the street to your house, that's distribution. Did I close enough? I'm looking at our folks from Colonial Power and they're saying close enough. Okay. Right. So we've talked about Eversource, we've talked about community choice aggregation. There are other options too. Eversource basic service continues to remain to be a default for any customer who doesn't want to do competitive supply, either through community choice aggregation or through a competitive supplier. There are, I think a couple of dozen plus or minus competitive suppliers in Massachusetts with a variety of products that Carlisle residents and businesses, for that matter too, can avail themselves of, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. Those are separate from community choice aggregation. You can do on-site solar, always an option for a homeowner. Having solar, being on community choice aggregation, not an issue, not a problem. Some of those questions came up during some of use the word blowback from the residents' energy letter went out. But just to clarify, you can do community choice aggregation. You can have solar on your roof, on your property. There's no issues. Community solar is an option where you effectively buy into a larger offsite solar farm. And then finally, while we're here, mostly talking about community choice aggregation, CCA. In Carlisle, you are automatically opted in. You have to proactively opt out if you don't want to remain in CCA. And again, there is information there for you to go in or out or to change your supply. Finally, so we talked about the fact that there are other options besides CCA and Eversource. And there are quite a few. There is a very interesting report that came out from the AG's office. Is actually a third update of a study of studies they have done over the last 4 or 5 years, looking at the costs and benefits of going for competitive power suppliers. Bob will go into more detail on this, but there are not many overall on average benefits. If you do look at a competitive supplier, be careful, read the contract carefully, see what the cancellation fees are, see how long the term is. Sometimes there are, I use the term loss leader rates to get you into their contracts, but then costs can go up. And I want to be careful, not all suppliers function that way, but you do need to look at the fine print fairly carefully. And this study, as I said, is the third update. It came out in May of last year, looking at the 20 and 2021 period. Over the last 6 years, over $500 million was spent by Massachusetts customers paying more than if they had bought Eversource basic service. Interesting that we have a lot of per town detail. For Carlisle in 2020 and 2021, the average household who was doing competitive supply spent between $500 and $600 more a year on competitive supply than if they had gone to Eversource as the default. And as we pointed out, community choice aggregation is even cheaper than EverSource. So again, this may work for you, depending upon your needs, but be careful. And there's you can't, well, we can't see it, hopefully you can. There was a reference there, and also the references in the back to the AG's report if you want more information. I'm going to turn things over to Bob.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
That's great. So we're gonna go over just a bit of the history of CCA here in Carlisle. First of all, Massachusetts is one of about 10 states that permit CCAs. So you can't do this everywhere in the country. Right now, roughly half of the communities in the state are participating in CCAs. And there are a lot more in line to try to get into the program. That's been popular. We in Carlisle authorized this in 2016 at our annual town meeting. And we just started our third contract with Dynegy Energy, as Glenn mentioned. It's a 2-year contract that just started in January, goes through January 2026. So currently, roughly 70% of the electricity consumed here in Carlisle goes through the CCA. And if you look at the residential portion, it's about 75%. And as we mentioned, Court is our broker. And for this services they provide, they charge a fee of about 1/10 cent per kilowatt hour. And that probably adds around $1 a month to your electric bill on average. And just putting in an opinion, they earn it. So how does it work? If you're an existing customer, and Glenn just stepped through how you can tell if you're in the CCA. You don't have to do anything. That's the good news. You're automatically enrolled in under the new contract. However, you are free to leave at any time you'd like, and there's no fee for canceling. You just go to the website, Colonial Power's website, or call Colonial Power, and they'll take care of it. It does take 1 or 2 billing cycles, so a month or 2 for the paperwork process. However, a lot of people are on the default product and may not even realize that they have a choice of 2 other products. So if you would like to opt for one of the other products, the one you currently have, you do have to take action. You have to contact Colonial Power and let them know you want to make that change. So if you're on EverSource basic service already, and again, it says EverSource is your supplier on your bill. Again, your bill always comes from EverSource. So the fact that it's from EverSource doesn't tell you the supplier. You have to read the bill. If you've previously opted out of the CCA, if everything works as it should, you will be left with your current supplier, no problem. If you decide you want to switch to the CCA, contact Colonial Power and they'll bring you in. If you have not previously opted out, or maybe you just moved to Carlisle, maybe you were under a competitive supplier and that contract ended, you're under EverSource basic service, you should have received a notification about the CCA. And you will be switched into the CCA under the default product if you take no other action. So if you'd like to stay with EverSource, you do have to contact Colonial Power and let them know. If you want a product other than the standard default product, you do have to let Colonial Power know. So those are important. Sometimes you have to take action. If you're with a competitive supplier, you'll stay with that competitive supplier until you decide either your contract ends or you decide you want to switch out. Caution, if you're under a competitive supply contract right now, please read your contract because you may have an early termination clause. You want to be aware of that. So you may have to pick your timing on when you switch out, but with that caveat, you're free to switch. Okay. Let's just go through the products again quickly. I'll bring up this slide again at the end. So just immediately want to clarify the prices for 3 products. The standard product is about 16 cents, and that compares to EverSource, which is just over 17 cents a kilowatt hour. So still even though it has 25 percentage points more Class 1 renewable content, it's still cheaper than Eversource. The basic optional product that matches Eversource in terms of renewable content, it's about 15 cents, so a good 2 cents cheaper than Eversource. And if you opt for the Green 100 product, that is 100% renewable, a little under 18 cents. That's the only of the three products that's higher than Eversource basic service, and it's a fraction of a penny higher. So right now, about 1,600 accounts in Carlisle are under the CCA. And over 80% of those are on the default standard default product. 18% have switched to the optional basic, and 1% is getting a 100 renewable. This chart is showing our cost savings over the past 5.5 years under 2 different contracts we've had so far. Each bar represents a period of 6 months, and the blue bars are a savings versus Eversource basic service. The red bars are periods where we paid more than Eversource basic service. So again, savings are not guaranteed. And these fluctuations you see are due to fluctuations in Eversource's price, not fluctuations in the CCA price. That CCA price is locked in by the contract for the duration. But you can see in the last 2 years, we have saved a bundle of money because Eversource and other investor-owned utilities supply prices went crazy over the past 2 years. And they've come down some, but they're still pretty high. So add that all up. And as Glenn mentioned, 3.1 million in savings. That's an average of $350 per year per account. And projecting over the next 6 months or so, the savings will be a little more modest, more like 120,000 over that time period. Again, we have to point out that savings are not guaranteed. Eversource prices will change. They're locked in for the next 6 months, but they'll change after that. Let's talk a little bit about the environmental considerations, get into a bit more detail on what it means to buy renewable energy through this vehicle. First of all, if you look at our transmission and distribution system, you have all these generators. Some of them are fossil fuel, some of them are renewable. They're all dumping their electricity into the same grid. It's all mixed together. It's kind of hard for the customer to sort out what they're really getting at the end. So policymakers have set up a system where if you're a renewable generator, you're allowed to sell 2 products. And these 2 products are sold completely independently of each other. You can buy the electricity, you can buy the environmental attributes, you can buy one, you can buy the other. You don't have to buy these together. These are unbundled markets. The environmental attributes are packaged in renewable energy certificates, or RECs. For every megawatt hour that renewable generator generates, they earn 1 REC, which they are free to sell. Okay. The commodity electricity, they sell just like a conventional fossil fuel generator would. So what's it mean to purchase a REC? What it means is you have the right to claim whatever number of RECs you buy, you have the right to claim you're using that amount of renewable energy. Yes.
So find right again, what is, are we saying?
Renewable energy certificate.
Thank you very much.
Renewable energy certificate. Thank you. But really what happens is RECs, the primary thing they do is they stimulate new investment. If the market puts a value on these RECs, and as the price goes up, and if you're a renewable generator, you'll be motivated to put in new generation assets. Now, the reality is whatever new renewable generation is installed already will continue to operate and sell because there's no fuel costs associated with that generation. They generate fossil fuel free. Another important factor And bear with me here because I'm gonna make a couple of very important distinctions in the next couple of bullet points. Not all RECs are created equal. RECs can come from different sources. They have differing environmental benefits and they have differing costs that reflect the differences in environmental benefits. What we're going to encourage you to look for is Massachusetts Class 1 RECs, okay? They have arguably the best environmental benefit, but they're also the most expensive RECs you can buy. What does it mean to be a Class 1 REC? To qualify for a Class 1 REC, your facility has to have come online after 1997, has to be in New England. It's limited to wind, solar, small hydro, and landfill gas generation. And the requirements, Massachusetts has requirements for Class 1 content as well as other types of content. Those requirements for Class 1 content go up 3 percentage points every year. So that helps ensure continued market growth. Our recommendation, even though this is a bit of a simplification, when you're comparing different suppliers and looking at renewable products, that you look at the Massachusetts Class 1 renewable content and ignore the total renewable content. Because the Class 1 content is so much more valuable in terms of its environmental impact. It's really a more accurate comparison if you're really concerned about the benefit to the environment. If you cannot get the number for Class 1 content separate from the total renewable content, we'd encourage you to shop elsewhere. If you don't know that number, the Massachusetts Class 1 content is probably the legal minimum. Okay, so with that in mind, we'll go back to our 3 products again. And again, Eversource at the bottom here. That just meets the bare minimum requirements in the state for Class 1 content. And that requirement is 24%. That ratchets up to 27% into 2025, but for 2024, it's 24%. Our standard default product has 25 percentage points higher renewable content, so about 50%, about double the Class 1 content compared to Eversource. Our optional basic product, same as Eversource, the 25% or so. Optional green, that's 100% Class 1. Okay. I'm not going to go through this. This is just for reference. I have a bunch of links here that take you to all sorts of sources for more information about your supply options. In case you'd like to do additional research, these will be available on the town website, so don't worry about copying them down. And the recording of this presentation and the slides will also be available on the town website. If you don't have the link, if you could just go up to the top bar and look under Living and Visiting. Click under Living and Visiting on the toolbar at the top of the website. You'll find community choice aggregation, and you'll find all the information that we covered today. So with that, that ends our formal presentation, and we'd love to open the floor up to questions, and both here in the room and through Zoom.
I believe there was at least one in the chat.
Yes,
Sarah?
we did have one in the chat. Carl is wondering, which utilities are selling into the optional basic, and how can we tell if they are or aren't green to some degree? There.
Mark, you want to take a crack at that?
So I'm not completely sure of the question. So the utilities aren't selling, they sell it to you, but they do exactly what the town does. They go out to bid twice a year, they buy 50% of their needs, and they ladder those 2 buys to come up with a basic service price every 6 months. But they're buying it from the same suppliers that you're buying from. You're running the exact same auction, just at the wholesale level, not the retail level.
Is that helpful, Carl?
It's sort of helpful, but the point I'm trying to make is that we're presumably paying a premium for a greener mix because we're responsible Carlisle citizens, but we don't really have much transparency on who the suppliers are. At one point, we were getting mailings from Dominion down in Virginia, and the basic my take was that if you wanted to buy all the fossil generated electrons, you could get a lower cost out of Dominion. And maybe that's correct, or maybe it's not correct. So I'm asking whether or not we know anything about the supply side, the supplier mix for that lower price. Is it a given that we're paying a little bit more to be more responsible? That's really the essence of the question.
Mark Capadona, Colonial. The answer is yes, you're paying a slight premium for those mass class 1 RECs. From an energy perspective or the electron, although they'll just tell you what the system mix is, meaning what overall the system mix is 60% natural gas, 30% nuclear, and the rest is kind of a small mismatch, if you will. But overall, they won't tell you exactly. You're getting your electron from the closest power plant to Carlisle, unfortunately. And I don't currently know what that is. If you happen to live near a solar array, believe it or not, you'll actually be getting the solar. There's no way to get an electron to travel to your house, so they just electrify the grid, and that's why they don't tell you where it is. But you get the credit for those mass class 1s. If you're in the standard product, you get 25% more than you would otherwise have if you were getting just the basic product.
Yeah.
Very large step forward for Carlisle.
So
Who's the balancing authority on the SRECs? Just I should know that, but I don't. So how do we know that we're all purchasing the same the actual available number of SRECs in the is that balanced at the state level or at the federal level?
It's actually balanced in the ISO system, the GIS accounting system. They need to report all the voluntary RECs there. The mandatory RECs that are part of RPS, or the Renewable Portfolio Standard, is done at the DOER or the Department of Energy Resources. The 25% is done in the GIS system at ISO.
Thank you.
let me just take it up a step here because we're probably losing a lot of the audience here. I think and all the details are great, but our supplier is known. It is Dynegy. Okay, so we do know that. And we do know that they're securing the renewable component through purchase of RECs, and we know exactly what mix. And all that information is on our website and it's available. And I focused on the class 1 here for simplicity because we think that's the most important. So I do think we know what we're buying, and it is this accounting system, if you will, we use that's kind of hard sometimes to get one's head around, that we're buying the renewable energy certificates as a proxy for buying renewable energy directly because the grid is mixing everything together. So I hope that helps.
Perfectly stated.
All right. Looks like the next question in the chat is from Steve. He asks, what is the technology mix in the 100% option? It sounds like maybe that was covered a little bit in the previous answer.
Yeah.
But
so
maybe
that's
just,
where we separate reality versus how the accounting system works. The accounting system says it's 100% Massachusetts class 1, but that's by virtue of purchase of RECs. But as Mark just said a minute ago, we're getting a mix of whatever generation assets are operating at any particular time and going into the grid. We're all getting the same electricity. The one exception could be if you have solar on your roof, you might argue that those electrons are preferentially going to your home. But if you're not generating as much as you need, you're getting the rest from the grid. If you generate more than you need, you're exporting to the grid and your neighbors are using some of that. So that's just this melting pot we have of all these generation sources. Go ahead.
I would just say most likely it's going to be wind in New England. Solar RECs are very expensive. So more likely than not to get the price that you have, it's going to be either anaerobic digester, wind, or if there is some small hydro that are still out there, I just don't know if they have access to them, but that would mostly make up your mix. In New England.
Okay, great. Good answer. Thank you.
Looks like we have a question in the room.
I actually have a number, but I'll just start. So you just said that, solar RECs are expensive. So are you referring to SREC?
Yes.
So SRECs, they don't, yeah, I mean, the SREC program, SREC 2 is still in effect. But then it switched over. So new solar, does it get SRECs also?
It does not, those go automatically to the utility.
Okay. And once you've had solar for 10 years, I mean, you're guaranteed to have SRECs for 10 years. After 10 years, I mean, basically what I found is I'm getting about a half. You know, I was getting about $300 per megawatt.
You had SREC 1.
Right.
Yes, yep,
And a little less for SREC 2. I have both SREC 1 and SREC 2.
oh, yep, about 220.
220. I thought it was a little more than that. But now my SREC 1 has expired and I'm getting about $30 for those. Is that about right?
For the rec.
I'm still getting RECs of some sort. I'm still getting but I get something like $30 per megawatt hour.
What's interesting is I thought after 10 years that you didn't get anything for the rec.
Well, evidently, there was a bill a while ago that they wanted, so you didn't get it, but I think it didn't pass. So we could sell it, but we don't sell it the price it used to be selling it.
I see you getting 1/10.
My guess is we're selling it as regular rec.
Gotcha.
I mean, we're going through an aggregator, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
which, just so you know, the rec price right now for a mass class one around $38 for rec, somewhere in that range, so, yeah,
Yeah, we're getting close to the.
I don't disagree with you at all. Yes, the mass class one price, that is correct.
Okay, well, I'll let other people ask questions. Fine.
All right. The next question is from Leo. How was Dinergy selected as the new CCA? By what criteria and by whom?
Oh, what a great question. I'll start on that and I'll let Martin come in or Denise. So this is where, Colonial Power was the peak. We started kind of in the beginning of 2023, I'd say, and started, talking with Colonial about the fact that our contract was coming to an end, what we need to do. And, we discussed the timing of when to go out to bid. And if I get some of these numbers wrong, correct me, but I think, early in the springtime, Mark and Denise encouraged us not to wait until the last minute because all the suppliers know you're waiting till the last minute and you don't necessarily get the best prices. Select board was involved. The select board had our town administrator appoint a small committee. At the time, it was Glenn and me, and also Sue Thomas, who was our sustainability coordinator. We were assisting Ryan playing with the process on the town's end. We also had the select board involved as well, and we briefed them on the status all the way through this. But in any case, when the timing was right, Colonial Power went out for provisional pricing. So they go out to suppliers and say, well, this isn't a real bid, but we want to get an idea what the marketplace looks like right now. We're not to a number of suppliers. We got pricing. And then we sat down with the select board again and said, okay, what do we think makes sense in terms of how much renewable content? Do we still want to have 3 products? Select board and the town administrator, based on that provisional pricing, made a tentative decision that we can up the renewable content a little bit on the default product. So instead of 15 percentage points over on the class 1 content, we went to 25. We kept 100% renewable. We kept the default of basic, match the minimum requirements of the state. Then came the exciting part, which is we go out for the real bids, and Colonial is handling all this bid process. The morning the bids are due, Colonial Power puts them all together, a nice neat spreadsheet, sends them over to the town, maybe around 10 in the morning or something like that. The town has a couple hours to mull them over. Early afternoon, we conference with Colonial Power, go through the options. And say, are we ready to pull the trigger? If so, confirm the products we want. Before the end of the day, we've committed to a contract. Multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract. Done in less than 8 hours from receipt of bids to final signed contract. It's amazing. How was that?
That's perfect.
All right.
That is forensic.
Hopefully that answered your question, Leo. For in the time in mind, I'm gonna move on. Our next question is from Marilyn. If we saved so much money over the last 3 years using the previous vendor, why are we switching vendors? Is it mostly about trying to get more green mixed into our supply via the RECs?
Well, there's a couple answers to that. And frankly, I'll say right up front, we didn't ask our previous supplier to bid. You know, when we had a few concerns, when Eversource pricing went through the roof. And a couple situations where residents was, concerned about honoring their contract, and we didn't want to be in that situation again. Colonial Power beefed up the contract when they went out for bid again. But I don't know exactly how many suppliers you approached for their bid, but it was a substantial number. So, we went with the lowest price for the best product. Best meaning met our renewable requirements. So, it's really came down to price and reputation of the supplier.
No, previous supplier.
Residence Energy.
All right. Steve is wondering why Massachusetts has the highest electricity costs in the continental United States. That seems
Wow.
a broad question.
Yeah, you know, this came home to me. I was talking to some friends who live out in Idaho and they're paying 6 cents a kilowatt hour.
Oh, God.
So I don't know, Mark.
I will tell you, so, again, Mark Capitone, Colonial Power, so we are in a very constrained natural gas pipeline. We're at the end of the pipeline at Iceland. Not that anyone wants to hear that, but how we get gas is the problem. During the very cold snaps, we backfill the system with LNG, liquefied natural gas. And that in there lies the problem for ISO New England. We are in a market that's a worldwide market, and that market has been disrupted by Mr. Putin and what's going on in Europe. He shut them off, he tried to freeze them out. They were willing to pay any amount of money, not this winter, but last winter for LNG. So we're now competing for those same shipments of LNG to get them here across the ocean, if you will. Unfortunately, there's something here that handcuffs the United States. It's called the Jones Act. And unless a ship is built and manned here in the United States, you cannot deliver goods by that ship. And you know how many LNG ships are built and manned in the United States? 0. So that doesn't, we are sitting on a sea of natural gas, and we are one of the largest exporters of LNG. Not one of those ships can come here because of the Jones Act. So we are now competing in a what would be an international market against people that at least last year were desperate, and that's exactly what happened to the pricing in ISO New England and why it's so currently that. And it's not that I blame anyone. Very difficult to site new plants. Nobody wants anything built in their backyard.
That was very informative. I didn't know that. All right. I apologize, Lee, you've had your hand up, but you're also next in the line in the chat, so I can read your question. You're wondering, how can I tell from my bill what tier I'm currently in, and how do I contact Colonial to change that? That's Lee's question.
Yeah, so Glenn showed a slide. If you look at the second page of your bill, there is a line for supply. And let me back up and say, this is the way Eversource does it. It's not our idea. It could be a lot more clear, it isn't, but this is how you determine. First, you look at the first page and verify that in fact you are in the CCA. So again, you'll either see residence energy listed as the supplier for 2023, or you'll see Dynegy listed as the supplier for 2024.
Yeah, the most recent bill says residents.
Pardon me?
My most recent bill says residents, so,
But your next bill will say Dynegy.
yeah.
And then on the second page, somewhere in the middle, you'll see a supply price category. And there'll be a quantity in kilowatt hour, and there will be a price. It'll be like, and your bill for December might have said 0.1145 or something like that, if you have the default product.
Yeah, 0.1145. So that's the default 25%
That's
extra
what the
product.
price used to be. Now the price is closer to 16 cents. That'll show on your next bill.
Okay.
Fortunately, looking at that price and going to our town website and looking at the price of each product is the only way you can tell. You have to compare that price listed on your bill to the price listed on our town website or on the Colonial Powers website, whichever you go to. You'll
So
see-
for the benefit of the other participants here, the 0.11450 rate is the standard. Do you have offhand what the other rates were for the previous suppliers?
It was about, for the basic, the optional basic, it was about 10.5 cents. And for the green 100, it was about, I think it was about 13.9, yeah, thanks.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah, 13.9.
So it's about 10-15% more. So then the second part of the question then, if I want to contact, you said contact Colonial to change it. How do I contact them?
Okay, if you go to Colonial Powers website and you look under community, you'll find Carlisle listed. Click on Carlisle and you'll find a description of the products and information on how you change from one product to another, or how you opt out or opt in.
Exactly. You want to go to that opt-in, opt-out button, and then you can
Okay.
choose any one of the products that you want. And on that sheet, it's going to tell you standard product and the price, you know, the basic product and the price, and 100% end product, which is much easier to see.
And Sarah just put the link into the chat.
Yes,
Oh, great.
links are in the chat.
Great, thank you.
And that information is also available on the town website. It'll link you to Colonial Power as well. Yes, sir.
Building on that gentleman's comment, his December bill, like my December bill, has 0.11450. And all the numbers you're showing us with the, on the view graphs.
Yep.
Are up to 15 cents and 7. Standard default is 0.15989. And the basic is 0.15025. The optional green is 0.17896. So those numbers are significantly higher than the.
That's right, they are.
So we're switching to a high price product from 0.114.
Well, we're entering in a new contract, a
Really?
new time period.
Yeah.
And I think the way I would describe it is, we enjoyed a period of several years of very low, relatively speaking,
Yes.
very low electric prices. And I can tell you, communities around us were screaming, especially the ones who were trying to set up CCAs for years and have been unable to do it. And they were paying through the nose, whether it was National Grid or Eversource. So, so what's happening is we're getting a little bit of a market adjustment, but we really missed a huge. We fortunately missed having to pay a huge amount because we were protected by our contract price. But
So believe it or not, out in the world, so last winter, Eversource was 25 cents a kilowatt hour. That's from their December 1st right through June, that's what their rate was. Yours stayed at that 11.45. And then we ended up, we're near the end of the contracts, we end up going into the same market they're in, hence the price that you're seeing. But when you think about your price, it was 3 years ago during a historic low time in the market. We were just getting into COVID, there was extra supply and all of that. That's why hasn't been talked about here. Your last contract was 36 months because we're at historic lows. This time we're at more elevated prices. We decided not to go as long.
Okay.
Kind of keep things shorter in case the market was to settle out at any time.
Let me ask a question backwards. Okay?
Sure.
It's a basic question, and I
Yeah.
really don't understand it. So the three products that we have with energy is 15, 15, and 17 cents. And my existing product is 11 cents. If I don't go to the CCA and stay with Colonial, will my price still be 11 cents?
So Colonial is nothing more than the aggregator. We assist the town. Colonial does not have its own price. Only the town has its own price.
But that 11 cents doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
That's a expired contract.
Right.
And
You-
no one would sell electricity to us for that price now.
Okay,
You're gonna automatically switched in that product. You're gonna go to 15.98 something. That's the product that you're in, the standard default.
Yeah.
And that's the current product that you'd get moved to. 15 from residence to Dynegy, that 11.45 is gonna automatically move you to the 15, I believe it's 9.8.
Almost 16.
99, yeah.
But it will still be cheaper than Eversource, so the savings per kWh will not be as large for this 6-month period than it was during the prior.
Cheaper than Eversource or cheaper than Colonial? I'm getting mixed up with all these.
So Colonial is Carlisle in the same. We work for you.
Right.
We don't have our own supply. We only just report your supply to you. Your other choice is 17, I think 2.5 with Eversource. Or those shark infested waters for third party supply. Just be careful. You can get a good deal out there right now. But it's not the current contract you worry about with third party supply. Just make sure that you know when that contract's going to end. That's the most important thing, the term.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You can also opt down.
Oh, that's true.
In the Carlisle program, you can opt down from the standard product. If you're looking to maximize savings, you can opt down to the basic.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, excuse me, let me go on that.
Oh,
The energy thing that we have three prices, okay, the standard default, the optional basic and the optional green. Which one is Carlisle automatically going to unless I opt out?
So you're in standard, you're in the 11.45.
Yes.
So you're gonna get moved to the standard, which is the 15.98.
Right.
But you have an option, if you'd like to, you can come down to the basic. Or if you wanted to, you can go up to the 100%, which is just about 17, no, it's 17.25, something like that, 17.98.
17,896.
Okay, so I'm gonna be going, if I don't do anything, I'm gonna go to optional basic. I can get it cheaper if I went to standard default.
You
That
go,
is correct, Dave.
Thank you very
well,
much.
you won't go to basic, you go to standard.
Standard default, yes. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Standard.
She had her- I got you right, yep.
Got it.
Unfortunately, the terminology, standard and basic sound the same,
Yeah, I
they're
got
very
it.
different.
Thank you.
Anything else from the Zoom audience?
we've got a limited amount of time, so I think Leo has kind of a long question here, but I feel like the essence is at the end. Wondering about how do you protect yourself from a bad supplier? If you're somebody who isn't super well versed, you don't know the reputation or access to contracts and determine what makes a good contract or a bad contract. So his question is, can Colonial recommend the supplier with the cheapest price and a good reputation?
Well, that's what
And
they're doing. through
I
the
was-
CCA, you know.
Yes,
At that time, the only thing I would say is there's a website set out and it's called energyswitchma.gov. And that would show you all your options. All you need to know is the town's zip code right there. So you just say,
And it's also listed in our references.
oh,
Yeah.
perfect. And that's gonna show you all the options. If you just hit residential on that site
Mhm.
and put your zip code, that will show everyone at home all the options that they have in Carlisle.
great.
For third party supply, just be aware that it's not, the first contract is not where they get you.
Yeah.
It is not where they get you.
So
You
the
know
answer,
you won't be paying attention when the rate changes.
in terms of protection, the competitive supply route, your protection is your savviness in reading the contract. If you go with the CCA, you have the town and you have Colonial Power looking out for you. as best they can. I mean, nobody's perfect. If you stay with Eversource Basic Service, you know, they're regulated, they have to play by the rules, they have to be fair in how they market and whatnot. So I think, it's fair to say, if you stay with Eversource Basic Service, you'll get fair treatment. Yes, Dave?
I was looking up why Massachusetts rates were so high, and it was interesting. I came across something that said part of it is because our electricity is unregulated. These third-party suppliers do exactly as you say. They give you a low rate, but there are no regulations on them at all, so they can raise their rates to whatever they like. So a lot of times you come in, you get a low rate, and then they raise your rate.
Right.
You're not paying attention, and you end up paying more.
And that's $500 million that Glenn talked about, and again, it's partially regulated, right? You know, the part that's deregulated is the supply side.
No, but that's what I mean. Those suppliers, those independent suppliers, there are no regulations. They're free to do whatever they like with their rates.
Yeah, that's a much longer conversation, but that's basically the truth, yes.
Yes.
Joseph, do you have?
I just thought we should address Leo's most recent question.
Oh.
Those two. I thought it'd be good for us to discuss, so we, fully understands how we vet the suppliers to make sure that they are reputable and that all of us collectively met and discussed all the options. It wasn't just Colonial picking, the standard product. It was Carlisle and like a uniform, group. So I just thought it would be good for us to discuss that.
Yeah, so the process is not Colonial. We're here to advise and only advise. And I tip my cap to Carlisle and the decision they've made from a 25% more mass class one. If you're going to look, not that anyone's keeping scorecards, but you're at the top of the heap as far as additional renewable energy in it being a mass class one in your standard product. You know, places like Newton and Brookline has slightly more than the city of Lowell, but Carlisle, as far as Eastern Mass would go, they'd be right there in, one of the top 10 communities as far as Massachusetts renewable energy is concerned. And I wanted to just make one other point. We tried, Bob and I went back and forth on the old contract with residents. I remember the long discussion. We weren't certain, and it didn't work out for us. So we've removed them. We don't no longer use residents' energy because we just don't like the way they participated in the marketplace. They were trying to treat the town like they were a third-party supplier, and that's not the way aggregation works. So they no longer work with Colonial. That's why we're working with the Dynagy's, Direct Energies, Constellation, and players at that level, because they are honoring the contracts and required to.
I apologize.
Change at all.
I know there's advantages and disadvantages, and your slide show is excellent, okay? But I'm listening with this, condensed it into a basic question. And I think you're gonna say, well, because this has more advantages. So here was my question, okay? Carlisle is going with the standard default, right? Which is 15989.
Yes.
However, there's a cheaper product, which is called optional, the optional basic,
Right.
which is a little cheaper. Why wouldn't they go to cheaper? Because there's other advantages. So why wouldn't they go to optional basic instead of standard default, where they get 1 cent change, 1 cent advantage?
No, it's a good question. And this is something over the whole course of the CCA program.
Sure.
The Carlisle Select Board has discussed many, many times and gotten input from many, many people. And it is a select board decision. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not up to Glenn or me or anyone else who's volunteering to serve. The select board, well, they're volunteers too, of course, but they make the decision based on their read of what the community is looking for the default product. And the reason you need a default product, by the way, is the only reason this program works is because there is a default option. If it were totally opt-in other words, to even get into the CCA, you had to take some action. The reality is most people don't even look at their utility bills. They don't look at mailings. They don't look at information. They pay the electric bill once a month. They would never opt in. We get 5% participation and the model would not work. So The tricky part about CCAs is if you're an Eversource basic service, you get pulled in automatically. But the fact you get pulled in, you get told you're gonna be pulled in, you have the option to get out, but if you don't do anything, you do join the program. And if you join the program and you have more than one option, one has to be the default. So the select board had to pick something. And there are people who would argue we should have the cheapest product as the default. The reason they don't do that is because they're making a judgment call based on what they see as the community values and about how much can people pay to add a little more renewable content. Generally, the guideline has been, although we don't know, you've never guaranteed where your pricing is going to come, you try to target a renewable content that will still be no more expensive than Eversource basic service, even with the additional renewable component. Again, we can't guarantee that. But that is the strategy that the select board has used historically.
Okay.
Price it so that we come in similar to what you would pay through Eversource basic service. And historically, we've actually saved money, so we've come in under.
Let me answer my own question for those who are listening on Zoom. The select board had a choice, and they chose the more expensive choice, not much more expensive, because of the value of how they interpret their community. So there has to be an advantage, and you told me the advantage, which is fine, I accept it. That they added a penny or another few cents, a little bit more.
Yes.
Right, because it has much better or significantly added renewable content. So we're paying for that advantage. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, some people won't like it because it's a penny more, but there's a reason. It's not just plain, cheap or not. It's renewable content and other advantages, and that's the advantage they chose. Yes. I understand that and accept it, so that explains my answer. Thank you.
So there's a comment that is a 42% increase in price is terrible. It's true, that is, but actually the generation charge is only half the bill. You pay another 15 cents for distribution and transmission. So it's really only like about a 25. I mean, 25 isn't great either, but it's better than 42.
Yeah, that's true. It's not, so electric bills are not going up by 40%, let's be clear. But they might be going up by 20%. And that's a reality, but we would still be paying more if we're going through basic service on Eversource, at least for the next 6 months.
All right.
No additionality. No additionality, that's another word we didn't introduce, but that's slang for the environmental benefits.
All right. Well, the time is 8:12, and I believe we've addressed what people have put in the chat.
Great.
So, and I know you guys wanted to wrap up around this time. So, I mean, I don't want to cut anybody off if there's more discussion to be had.
Yeah, questions.
Oh,
Well, we can, Glenn and I'll stick around after we close out the formal meeting and answer any questions we didn't get so far.
all right.
Try.
So I think we will sign off from the Zoom. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate all your questions and your engagement, and we hope you have a good night.
Oh, and in
Oh.
terms of when you might post the recording and the slides.
I don't think it will take too long. I've
Okay.
not done the process yet myself, but
Okay.
it'll be a good tutorial experience. But yeah, it shouldn't be too long.
Again,
Keep your eyes peeled.
website under living and visiting on the toolbar, and you'll get to our community choice aggregation page. And probably there'll be a link on the left side that'll
Yeah.
take you to the slides and recording.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.